This painting was not going well. Everything's wrong. Every time I try to paint a sailboat, it never works out. I can't figure out the shapes. I don't know, I just can't get it done. So I was pretty frustrated and I was thinking about, why are you such a failure? Why can't you paint? You know, artists sometimes get that way. Frustrated, imposter syndrome, all of that stuff. And so what I did, I took this painting and I completely wiped it off, and I had a big gray mess. This painting was headed for the trash. So I started scrolling through some of my ocean pictures. Surely there's something else I could paint that I'd feel more comfortable with. I do like those beach paintings. And then I found this one. Ironically, my panel was just the color of this ocean. Let's give this a try. So I started with a charcoal drawing on top of my wet gray panel. I thought, it's a similar color family. I can have some soft transitions, and movement hides a lot of imperfections, like the movement of the surf. So I started with letting the underpainting guide me. I wasn't trying to be perfect, I just wanted to see what would happen. So I decided not to worry about value. I think it was mostly a medium value photograph. Um, the edges were nice and soft in some places, and I was going to emphasize the movement of the water and not the detail of everything like I tend to do. The original failure that I had with this kind of helped me to relax, realize this wasn't going to be a real painting. This was just some way to actually cover this canvas or panel and come out with a painting in the end. My goal was just to have some fun. So this is what I took away from this. It's okay to scrape your panel off and start over. A bad painting isn't the end, it's information. The sailboat turned into a muddy gray, which actually turned into a surf painting. This is a good reminder that all artists have these episodes where they feel like they don't know how to paint. For instance, I saw a video the other day with Jim McVicker, who is a marvelous painter. Check him out on YouTube. And Jim McVicker says, yes, he sometimes feels like an imposter. And I went, oh my gosh, this guy is so good. But I guess it's just common human nature kind of things that artists feel. So just keep going. And every time I get frustrated with a painting that I just don't feel like it's going well, and it's usually when I'm trying to try out something else, I usually, to make myself feel better, turn to something with water, and mostly the ocean, because I love the ocean. I love to paint the ocean. It's kind of my happy place. At this point, I still wasn't sure where this was going, but I was sure having a lot more fun. And that's the thing. Trust in the process. Just keep going. Even if you have a failed painting, that doesn't mean it can't be something else. It's also along the lines of when to stop. So if you're feeling frustrated, you don't know what to do, you can either take your painting, turn it to the wall, and come back to it later in a week or so, or just scrape it off and start over. Take a quiet moment. Let it breathe. So here I'm starting with the water. And I think the gray was a good underpainting for getting some very pale water on top of it. I think it helped to keep the value in the right place, because value is very important. So until this point, the only colors I've been using was ultramarine blue, red iron oxide, a little yellow ochre, and titanium white. So the rocks and the sand were all made with those various versions of those colors. So when I got to the water here, it needed a little something something. I mean, the picture was, well, pretty much the picture was showing gray water, but I just did want it because of all the sort of muted tones below in the rocks. I did want to have some kind of pick-me-up sort of color in the water. So I did get my, there was a turquoise color I got out. I think it was radiant turquoise. And I added that to some white with a little ultramarine blue. And then I also decided to make a green because there was hints of green in it as well. So the green was the ultramarine blue with cad yellow medium. So I didn't want to have it be too dramatic, but I wanted it to have a difference in color in contrast to the rocks. I was wondering if this was going to be the right shade of green. I think I ended up leaving it in the end, but I was already happier with this painting. You know, if you're stuck on a painting, don't wipe it off. Look at it differently. Or do wipe it off and start over. As you can see, I added some blue here. It's a real shallow area near the beach, and mostly you're going to see lots of tans and browns in this water. But there was also a lot of surf, there was a lot of movement, and so that calls for white. So you don't want to use titanium white, generally speaking, unless you're putting an accent on the tip of a wave. A lot of times I'll use yellow ochre and titanium white, and then sometimes I'll use ultramarine blue and titanium white to get water pictures, or I'm sorry, to get to paint the surf. Either one of those can work pretty well. I should have probably used a little teeny liner brush for this because it looks a little bit choppy. I always forget about that though for some reason. I felt like my rock right here in front on the lower left corner was kind of messy and it didn't really look like a rock. The one right next to it, right behind it, looks like a rock to me, but this one needed some more texture, some more color, just something. So I kept working on it. I felt like I needed to get more color in this rock. Um, so I added some other colors. At this point, you might say, if you're the artist, you might say to yourself, what's the center of interest? There always should be some focus to the painting that draws the eye first. I don't know what I'm doing there with the white, but it doesn't really belong. I think I was trying to show that there was some water on top of the rock, but it doesn't look like it. So that'll get covered up in a minute. But so I almost felt like my center of interest was really this second rock behind that corner rock. But then, you know, you have to think about it. This painting was for me, right? To make myself feel better. So I could do whatever I wanted, and if it didn't meet the criteria, then the heck with it. It didn't really matter. So back to these other rocks, just wanted to give them a little mixed texture. And at this point, I'm bouncing around all over this painting, doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, referring to my reference photo and trying to decide what major aspect of this scene have I missed. And that's where I realized I need a little bit more kind of surf action, a little bit more turbulence in the water. I'm curious, have you ever saved a failed painting? Do you throw them away? Do you start over? Do you get other people's opinions on what to do? Sometimes I used to do that, and I always kind of regretted it because although I asked for genuine criticism, I also got a lot of genuine criticism from my family. And, you know, I felt almost like it was counterproductive because the questions I had about my painting, the things I was worried about making better, were not what the my consultants addressed. And then I had more things to worry about, more things they thought were not right. So leave me a comment. Do you ask your family for opinions? So this is my final painting. I kind of like it. What do you think? Happy painting!